Welcome to the lineup. This week's review of interesting and important stories in law enforcement. This podcast is meant to inform and entertain. It's brought to you by the team at Officer Magazine and Officer.com. It's a production of Endeavor Business Media, a division of Endeavor B2B. Now, let's get into the show.
Welcome to the lineup, Officer Magazine's roundup of this week's police and law enforcement news. I'm your host, Joe Vince, assistant editor for Officer Magazine. And with me today for our very special holiday episode, my co-host, retired Lieutenant Frank Borelli. How you doing, Frank?
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Frank Borelli. Glad to join you here today, Joe. You got big plans for the holiday weekend, Thanksgiving coming up?
Not big plans. Going over to a friend's for Thanksgiving, and then meeting up with the son and the grandkids over the weekend.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah. How about you?
Yeah. Let me juggle the eggs and see what hits the floor. I don't.
Oh.
I'm staying home with my young lady and her son, and cooking a turkey bigger than we possibly could need, and then probably living on that for the weekend.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Well, as you can obviously see, we are getting ready for Thanksgiving. This is our special Thanksgiving edition of the lineup. We're looking at, over this past year of 2025, some of our favorite feel-good and heartwarming stories. I feel a lot of times when we're doing the lineup and even just in the day-to-day efforts of our job, we run into a lot of the negative side, the dark side, if you will, of police work, just in terms of them having to deal with offenders, violent activities. Well, this is that other side, and we really want to look at the other ways law enforcement is serving their communities, and some of the stuff that falls through the cracks, and put a spotlight on that, and the officers are responsible for them. So we're gonna, as always, packed show. So we're gonna get started right away. Kick it off with our first story. This was back. The story ran in September, but is actually from something that happened in March of this year, out of North Carolina. It was a traffic stop that sort of unfolded as most traffic stops do. This was out of Cabarrus County, where Deputy Sean Singleton had pulled over a driver, and the deputy's vehicle cam captured the entire interaction. It was stopped the driver for speeding, and when talking with the driver, she clearly was antagonistic, was not in a good mood. And in her own words, she met the deputy with an absolute attitude. What unfolded, however, was Deputy Singleton showing not only impatience, but wanting to understand the individual, to talking with the woman, and what could have been an ugly scene turned into something touching, where she opened up to the officer, explaining some of the difficulties she was going through in her life. And the officer's response to all of this was offering up if she wanted a hug, which she took that invitation. Fast forward to, this happened in March, to the fall, where this woman has maintained the relationship with Officer Singleton. She had talked to him about her years of sobriety, how her issues with substance abuse created difficulties with her child. But since then, like I said, she's been sober. She not only responded in such a positive way to this stop, but she feels she has created a relationship with this deputy who just took the time out to listen and be empathetic, um, and really help out a woman who was having trouble at that time.
So I'm very careful of the words I use, Joe, and I
Sure.
understand why you're saying relationship. This friendship uh,
Hmm.
is not one that you would have expected to develop, right?
Right.
Um, I like the fact that the officer was empathetic enough to realize something was going on and humane enough to reach and go and compassionate enough to say, is there something else I can do for you? Um, her reaction, her words, I was actually on my way to probably do something that wasn't in my best interest. Either going to get drugs or going to commit suicide. I mean, not one of the good things. She said he saw me as a person, not an addict, and we need to see everybody as people. Um, it reminds me, and I worked for an agency just east of DC in Maryland, and a guy walked up on one of our deputies one night, like 2 a.m. Officer was sitting doing paperwork on his computer, and a guy walked up to the car, and he hands the officer an envelope, and the officer opens a conversation with him. And an hour later, they're still talking. And what the guy had handed the officer was a suicide note because he was planning on committing suicide by police. He handed the officer the note, and then he was planning on instigating a fight and making the officer shoot him.
Mm.
But because of the officer's empathy and compassion, that's not how that worked out. And the guy ended up not getting violent, not committing suicide, having a little bit of hope. And it's amazing what can happen when we give members of our community that have lost all hope a little bit of hope and something. We show them sometimes that there are things they can be thankful for, blessings that are in their life, even when they're not feeling like there is. So, I mean, kudos to this officer's Deputy Singleton, and for the woman to be able to grow past her challenges
Yeah. Yeah.
and be in an appreciative place.
Yeah. It reminds me too of something my dad told me that his dad, my grandfather, had always taught me or had always taught him when it came to police work, was no matter who that person is on the other side, always treat them like a human being. And whether it was an offender, whether it was a law-abiding citizen, and it was always related with the story of my grandfather during an interrogation, basically getting the guy to open up just because he offered him a cigarette. Just like, hey, you don't want this, and that kind of started the conversation. So
That was the 70s, obviously, when offering somebody a cigarette wasn't considered attempted murder. But yeah.
I was gonna say it was probably the 50s or the 60s, but yeah. Moving on to our next story. What was the your first favorite story that you wanted to talk about?
So I don't know if it's all my favorite. This one,
Hmm.
we take a call to Mount Pleasant, and where is this, Joe? Wisconsin, where a little boy called the police on his mom, a 4-year-old boy. She ate his ice cream, and he called the police because she ate his ice cream. So the police show up, and the call gets disconnected. Mommy's being bad. Come get my mommy. She says, I ate his ice cream. So that's probably why he's calling 911. But, at the end of the day, uh, he didn't, by the time the police got there, and they did respond for that ice cream theft, he told them he didn't want her to go to jail. He just wanted some ice cream. And they responded back with some ice cream to surprise him so his mom would not be in trouble anymore. And these are the kinds of stories, right? It's real easy to show up, knock on the door. We got dispatched. Oh, a 4-year-old called 911 on his mom. Hey, don't call 911. It's not really an emergency. Mom's allowed to eat your ice cream. Have a good day. Bye. See ya. Uh, and that could be the end of it. But to go back and bring some ice cream, the little boy wanted some ice cream. And, what a great surprise for the little boy. And what does that do? How many times for all of my police officer, deputy, trooper brothers and sisters out there, how many times have you been someplace on duty in uniform and you'll hear a parent say to a child, and usually it's a child under 8 or 9 years old, right? Typically
Hmm.
toddler, preschool age. If you don't behave, I'm going to have that police officer take you away. And they use police officers, law enforcement professionals to scare the child into
Yeah.
behavior. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten down on one knee and said, hey, bud, I'm not going to take you to jail, but you do need to behave. You need to listen to your mom or dad, whatever it is. But if you need to remember that I'm here to help you, if you're scared, if you're lost, if you have a problem, you need to come to whoever you see in uniform. We're here to help you. We're not here to scare you. And I have a lot of parents get mad at me. Oh, don't you talk to my child that way. And they know that. Okay, cool. You do you, pal. You want to be a jerk? You want to teach your kid to fear the police? Knock yourself out. Me, I'm going a different route. But this guy, this 4-year-old, he is never going to get two deputies or two police officers to show up with ice cream and be absolutely delighted. That not only did they didn't arrest his mom, but they brought him ice cream. That's the kind of policing that reaches the heartstrings, and that's what we need right now.
Yeah, and these moments that it's a teaching moment for the parents, but it also demystifies law enforcement because yeah, like I said, I come from a law enforcement family, so that mystique still wasn't there. I got the curtain was always pulled back when my dad came home. So, but for a lot of other people, that isn't there. And you're right; they see it's what they see on TV, and
They see
some of
past the
the neg.
uniform and they see the
Yes,
human.
yeah.
All right. So, but you have a story that shows what happens after that. What's your next one?
Yes, one is out of Wyoming, and just the way that officers can touch a life in so many different ways, and how it sort of ripples over the years. Um, uh, let's see, Sweetwater County Sheriff's Detective Sergeant Jeff Sheeman was 15 years ago had saved a boy from hyperthermia, and again, this happened 15 years ago. One of these cases where this is what July of 2010, where the boy was in water, a storm had, on a boat, a storm had kicked up. Um, his whole family was shivering and stranded, and he helped the boy who was unconscious, um, brought him, helped him through the hypothermia, revived him. um, 15 years later, as this boy who is getting ready to graduate high school, his request of the now retiring or deputy close to retirement, his request was for that deputy to hand him his diploma. Um, I mean, right now it kind of breaks me up a little bit. Just to, it's always this idea of, are you making a difference? Especially when, you get off a shift, you got to come back the next day, and it's kind of the same stuff. What difference are you making? This is a perfect example, and just this one boy who has grown up into a teenager, and how he has grateful about his life being saved, and not only wants to remember that, but wants to make sure other people know that, and are aware of that. So I'm just, like I said, it breaks me up just right now talking about this.
So, and one of the big things that reaches out to me here, Joe, is that we don't ever know, right? I
Right.
had somebody once ask me, it was a carpenter, and we were talking. He said, at the end of the day, he goes, I go to work in the morning. I have lumber, I have screws, I have nails, I have my tools, and I work through the day building, making, whatever. He goes, at the end of the day, I see 100% of the results of my work. He said, how do you do that? I said, I never will. And he says, then why do you do it? I said, because what I don't see in my world completely outweighs everything you see in your entire career. And he says, that's
Mm.
impossible. What do you mean? I said, I delivered a baby one day in the back of an ambulance after a traffic accident. And he goes, oh my God, you delivered a baby. I'm like, yeah. Now think about that. That life that I helped bring into the world, and I've done it, I did it twice in my career. What an amazing experience. Said, what's that child's life worth? What are they going to do? I mean, hopefully, they could
Yeah.
become criminals. We don't know, but they could go on to become the person who discovers a cure for cancer. We never know, right? So I have to have faith that the crimes that I prevented without even knowing it, right? You drive up a street and somebody sees a police car and they don't commit the burglary, they don't commit the rape, they don't commit the murder, whatever it is. What we don't ever see, we have to have some faith in the weight of. Um, this is the kind of thing 15 years later, everything that guy's done with his life, what he's going to do, and the importance of the value of that police officer and that relationship, that friendship, the things that we don't see carry such immense weight. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm glad that this, in this case, that the boy who's like, yeah, I want you to be there. You hand me my diploma. See, this is my thanks to you. You saved my life. This is what I've done with it so far. I need you to be there to acknowledge that. That's what that means to me, and I think that's phenomenal. Those are those are irreplaceable life's experiences.
Yeah, and so sometimes it can, it's about the journey, not necessarily the destination. And again, yeah, I it just this just touches me. And who knows what this teen, as he grows into adulthood, ends up doing with his life. So, Frank, what's your next story on your list?
So I always grew up. Always, I'm still growing up. For everybody who knows me personally, knows I'm not grown up. Um, but when I was a child, it was not uncommon for there to be lemonade stands. Little table out there, pitcher of lemonade, plastic cups, nickel for a cooler of ice. Right now, these days, not a nickel anymore because you can't make lemonade and sell it by the cup for the nickel and not lose money. But in Upper Allen Township in Pennsylvania, back in July, a woman called the police to report a nuisance child
Mm,
selling lemonade at a lemonade stand. And the officer showed up because we have to be required to respond to these calls, right? Um, the woman wanted to relay. The woman who reported it wanted to remain anonymous. I'm going to name her Karen. We'll just leave it at that. Um, Told it, she said the girl was too close to the road, asked the police to investigate it. An officer, Mark Saguinito, I believe, showed up, made sure no laws were being broken, made sure the child was safe, made sure the lemonade stand wasn't in traffic, any of that stuff, sampled the lemonade, and posed for a selfie with the girl. And that post went viral on the department's Facebook page. A lot of commenters leaving positive remarks about how police handled the report. This to me is along the same lines of the police officer gets called for kids playing basketball in the street, and he and his squad show up to play a pickup game against the kids in the street. Or the officer got the call for kids sledding in the street, so he goes and gets on a sled and rides down the street.
mm,
Sometimes the folks in the world who are a little bit uptight or don't have any joy in their whatever it is, the only way this could get better. So I mean, he shows up, not only right, we make sure everything's okay, and then we take pictures and we support the lemonade stand. To me, this only could have got better if there was a picture of like a line of police cars waiting to pull up to the lemonade stand to buy a cup of lemonade from this person, right? This little girl. I mean, where are we in society that you see a kid out doing something that can bring them joy, that can put a few cents in their pocket, a few dollars, whatever, but they're not out stealing, they're not out shoplifting,
hmm
a lemonade stand out there, right? Um, and you call the police on them. Who does that? What's that say about the people that are there, right? But thank God for this officer, like Sanguinito, Officer Mark Sanguinito, who stops, make sure everything's safe, make sure there's no crimes being committed, make sure there's no, violations. Then we're going to take a selfie and we're going to taste the lemonade. It would only get better if he'd have bought gallons and gallons of lemonade from this kid. Truly made their day even better. I love stories like this where the Karens of the world don't get what they want. Joy gets spread anyway. And we go on to the next day. We go on to the next call.
And like we've been talking about, what that ripple effect can be, if he was quote unquote going to bust the lemonade stand, is that going to is that going to have a significant effect on Karen's life going forward? But again, talking about what this does about uh, creating a child's image of law enforcement and what to expect, and hopefully it's this sense of fairness, and this idea that it's not an enforcer someone can just call up.
Karens will Karen.
Exactly.
We
I'm
have
gonna
to
get
do
that on a
better.
t-shirt.
We have 15 minutes.
So, All right, moving on to my final story for our episode. This is out of Ohio, out of Cincinnati, where an officer was called in about a woman in distress, um, looking to jump from the ledge of a building, of a parking garage. Uh, in talking with her, this officer opened up in such a way that I mean, to a stranger, was just remarkable. Talking about a daughter he had lost many years ago, and the personal loss that he had had, and how there are, his quote, "There are angels looking over us. There's an angel for you," trying to reassure her and you know, in an attempt to stop her from jumping. He and other officers were able to bring her back onto the roof and hopefully get her the type of help she needed. But we see this a lot with officers on these types of calls. Again, what struck me was how open the officer was about his life and talking about that to this woman in an effort to save hers.
And this is kind of a conundrum that we have, Joe, because I was always taught to be coldly professional.
Mm,
Now, what's that mean? That means no human attachment, no human connection, nothing. I'm doing a job. I'm professional. I'm courteous. Everybody gets a modicum of respect, but then we're done, right? There's not the, oh, I feel your pain, and this happened to me, and I can relate to you, and that's not coldly professional, but that is compassionate, and it's hard for us as police officers to say I'm going to be coldly professional, but then I want you to remember that I'm a human being. Um, the department apparently in its news release said officers are fathers, mothers, sisters, and brothers, just like you. And if we want the community to see us as people, we have to act like people and not like RoboCop. We can't
yeah.
be that coldly professional. Um, there are truly angels among us. It's one of my favorite songs. Um, everybody finds themselves in a hard spot sometimes. Everybody finds themselves with a negative outlook for whatever reason, struggling, and you never know who that angel is, where that angel is, or the impact that that angel can have. But I think a lot of police officers fill that role of angel, and especially if you have somebody who themselves is struggling, and yet they have the strength to care for you, to help you, to show you compassion, uh, to show you that warmth and humanity. What if that's not an angel? What is?
Absolutely. Frank, your last story. Let's put a bow on it.
So obviously, and I'm into these stories where a police officer, deputy, whatever, has a positive impact on a child. I love the fact that children grow up to be better people. Hopefully, they have a different outlook of law enforcement. My last story that I picked was down in Tampa, um, where there was a traffic accident and an SUV flipped over, and the deputies or the police had to get there and actually cut through airbags to pull out the father and the 7-year-old son in this SUV after a rollover crash. And it rolls over, but it ends up sitting on the hood of another car, and they're trying to get the father and the son out. And I love that they do everything they got to do. They're trying to keep the man calm. They're trying to keep the boy calm. Body cam footage shows the rescue. The airbags are deployed, like I said. The man and the 7-year-old are still in there, and one officer's cutting away the airbags. The father, God love him, says to help his son first. Take care of my son
Mm-hmm.
first. Amen. There's a lot of parents out there who wouldn't have been like that. They've been so freaked. They've been like, "Get me out of here! Screw the kid!" No. But the officer says, "Hey, little guy, can you climb out here? Come on out, buddy." And he's just talking to the kid. I mean, the kid's got to be shaken up, literally. But so once the boy and the father are safely out, the boy high fives the officer and told him he was doing okay. And the officer says to him, "You're a champ, bro." Um, Minor injuries in this crash. The police officers credit the seatbelts and the airbags obviously played a role. But when you're talking to the kid, right, and so many adults in general, when we talk to children, we look down at the children. Years ago, I was a judge at a science fair, one of my son's classes. And, every time I had to go talk to one of the kids as a judge to talk about their project, they're 7 years old. They're, how tall are they? 3.5 feet, 4 feet. Get down on one knee, eye to eye with them, talk to them. And it was commented on by one of the teachers after. They're like, I love that you do this. Most parents don't do this. I'm like, it hurts my neck to look up at people. So I can imagine let me get down at their level and make them feel like they're equals. We're talking about their project. I need them to teach me about their project. She's like, yeah, we got to have this outlook. I love that this police officer, the high fives, tells the kid, you're a champ, bro. Make sure the kid's okay. I love the interaction. I love the fact that the dad absolutely put his son's welfare first. I've seen too many parents who wouldn't. It just, to me, this is the kind of thing where we didn't wait for the fire department to show up. No offense to my brother firefighter people. I mean, I did it for 11 years. I'm doing all I can not to throw out some names that they would throw back as police officers. The fire department, by the time they got there, police had already handled it. You got the father, we got the boy. They're out of the crash. Nobody's hurt. I like it. It's to me, it's another one of those stories of we have a positive impact on a young life, and hopefully he remembers it for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Well, that wraps it up for this special Thanksgiving episode. We featured 6 stories, but there have been countless other stories we've talked about this year that would deserve just the same kind of spotlight again. And so to that, thank you for every one of those police and law enforcement officers who have made that difference, whether it seemed big or small, in a person's life, in a community that they've served. Just remember, it does have an effect, even if it's not immediately apparent. I hope everyone out there is able to take some time out and enjoy the holiday with loved ones and friends.
100%. But for those of you who are eating Thanksgiving dinner in your cruiser, stay safe and know that you're appreciated. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of The Lineup. Please remember, the opinions voiced are not those of Officer Media Group or Endeavor Business Media, but only those speaking those opinions themselves. Thank you and stay safe.